I want to welcome you to a conversation with Demetria Kalodimos and me, Jim Shulman, the Vice Mayor. Demetria, thank you for doing this, and we appreciate people joining in today. It should be kind of fun.
Well, I hope everyone learns something, and I'm sure we're all learning a lot about ourselves, aren't we?
We're learning quite a bit on ourselves. And some of it is good, and some of it is not so good. It's been interesting going through this period of time because I have been out because I've had council meetings and I've had to deal with my day job stuff. But it's so quiet. You go downtown and it is so quiet. And then you talk to people who are at home and they're either going stir crazy or they found a way to kind of go, you know, now's the chance for me to start reading books or get in shape or, you know, go check on neighbors, you know, by phone or whatever. And so you see a lot of people out that you've never seen out before. So I've heard different things from different people. It's a chance. I always say, you know, sometimes when we get really busy, you go, can we just not stop for just a minute so I can catch up? Well, this is that time.
And I don't know about you, but old friends are coming out of the woodwork. Anyone calling that you haven't talked to in many years?
Well, so what we started doing, a couple of months ago, I have a very large family. I have a lot of brothers and sisters, but I also have an extended family, cousins that are mainly up north. So we had started talking about a giant family reunion. And this was long before COVID-19 happened, but we see each other at funerals, and fortunately no one in the family has died in a long time, so we haven't seen each other in a long time, and everybody has kind of lost contact. So we started throwing out an idea about getting everybody together, and people started joining in. And then when this COVID-19 thing hit, I do this with my brothers and sisters. We play a game called Family Jeopardy, which is basically Jeopardy, but the questions are all tailored towards family members. So you have to remember something that you did when you were growing up, and then so we do it by computer. So we send out the questions, and then they have a certain amount of days to answer back. We extended it to everybody in my extended family, and so the questions are really about different people in my family who we haven't talked to in years. So had to do a little Google work, and so the questions, we just finished our round of Double Jeopardy, and they're doing pretty well. So it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to hear from people you hadn't heard from in a long time.
I bet.
So, yeah.
That's a clever idea. The last time I saw you before this morning was at the State of Metro.
Right.
What, 3 people in the room, yourself, the mayor, and I assume whoever was running the camera. And we were at home, and of course we heard substantial property tax increase.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wasn't sure what the mayor was going to say. You know, typically at the State of Metro address, you'll hear what he's going to propose. I'm not sure if he knows yet. If you remember from other discussions, he was going to try to give us his budget on March 31st, the day of the State of Metro, because he wanted an extra month. He wanted us to take our normal 2 months to figure it out, April, May. He wanted us to try to pass it by the end of May so he could give it to the state comptroller's office, which has been kind of watching what we've been doing. So he could get, I don't know, just get some type of, not that the comptroller's office has to give us some type of formal approval, but they do approve everybody's budgets eventually. Usually it's pretty quiet. Nobody even knows that it's going on. He wanted to give the comptroller's office a month to take a look at it. Obviously, with everything that hit with the tornadoes and COVID-19, the city obviously economically has practically shut down. I mean, it's operating, but most of obviously the stuff on Broadway is closed. The tourism stuff has stopped. A lot of businesses that were deemed non-essential have had to shut down. And so we're looking at a pretty major hit. The latest numbers I got, I'm just looking at, were, I think for the last quarter in fiscal year 20, the one we're in, a $230 million hit. And I think I'm being told that people are supposed to mute their phones. Because we're hearing some people talk in the back. Not that I care, but if you can, just mute your phones. And I think you're supposed to mute your videos as well. So $230 million hit in the last quarter of this year, this fiscal year, and maybe a $250 million hit in fiscal year 21. And so what I'm not sure is how all that is going to play out and what the mayor is talking about. I will tell you that I think I got very fortunate. I think the city got very fortunate in that our budget chair is Bob Mendez, who is very smart, very good with financial matters. Happen to have a good relationship with Kevin Crumbo, who is the new budget director for Mayor Cooper. And so he has been trying to stay on top of it as well. Again, we're not exactly sure what the mayor is going to propose. We expect to know probably within the next 2 weeks. But as you said, at the state of Metro address, he set a pretty hefty property tax increase, and so we're sort of planning on that.
For people that might not understand the nuts and bolts, when would that take effect? Would you get a new bill? How would that work?
Well, so it's typical. You pay your property taxes. You can pay them, when you get your bill, but they're due in February, due at the end of February. So you're not going to see it hit just automatically that you have to worry about it. As soon as the mayor proposed or said what he did at the state of Metro, we started getting emails from people saying, don't do that. Everybody's out of work, so forth. Obviously, he is the mayor, when he campaigned on fiscal responsibility. He's been working on this for months, trying to figure out how to make this thing work. He didn't foresee, nor did anybody else foresee, tornadoes hitting on March the 3rd. And he certainly didn't foresee a COVID-19 epidemic that just, basically shut things down. So he's trying to figure out, he had his original budget, I think, ready to go, and they were just working on it. And here comes what I refer to as March Madness, where all of a sudden everything just completely changed. So he has had to refocus, redo his numbers, and figure out what he's got. And we'll all know when he gives us the number what we're dealing with. And then we've got to, as the council, have to sort through it and have to have a public hearing, have to listen to what people are concerned about, have to explain this to people, and then figure out where we go with it. So we have to work ahead of us. Yeah.
And you have a lot of, I hesitate to use the word rookie, but first-time council members.
Yeah. What
a 1-2 punch, huh?
Well, so I think the council, particularly the folks that were either directly or impacted by the tornado, and I think we had maybe 8, either 7 or 8 that really felt the impact. I think they did an outstanding job of holding it together. In fact, we put them on a new special task force that we were talking about just a few minutes ago to stay on top of it. What was really difficult for a lot of people was that we had all those people. I mean, this was like within the last, basically a month ago. If you remember the weekend after the tornado, I think there were over 20,000 volunteers that came out. We were all outside cleaning stuff up, moving piles, trying to help people kind of get stabilized. And then everybody had to go safer in place. And so we had that period of time where everybody was trying to figure out what to do about folks that were impacted by the tornadoes. And then all of a sudden, everybody had to kind of slow down really, really quickly. But we don't want to forget that. That's why we created a task force with those council members and Council Member Tanaka Vercher, who was the old budget chair, who was a very strong advocate. Their responsibility is to meet. They're meeting this coming Thursday to find out, okay, where did we leave off? I know people have been working on it, but where did we leave off? What are the needs of the community? And then a lot of people put in a lot of money into the community foundation, which is wonderful. And a lot of people gave a lot of, clothing and extra stuff, resources to the Community Resource Center. Where are we with all that? And is the money getting to where the people need to get to? As we're going through the Safer in Place, we can't forget about what happened to the city during the tornado. So, rookie council members, a lot of those young council members were impacted. it's funny you bring them up because I was talking to a couple of them yesterday. This typically happens on a Metro Council term, because I remember when it happened last term. There will be something that shows up. You bring in the new members and they're working through the council term, and somewhere in that first year or two, there is some issue that just blows up your emails. And particularly for new council members, they've never seen it before. But I think it's going to be the property tax increase. And council members who have never seen this before are going to, one day they're going to, after whatever this rate is, assuming that the mayor does what he said he's going to do, those emails are going to start coming in. And some of them are nasty, and there's a lot of them. And, for council members who are used to responding back to everybody, all of a sudden they're going like, oh, I'm not sure how to respond to that. And so as soon as we get that number, we're going to have 2 months to figure out what to do with the budget. And you're going to have young council members who have never done this before trying to figure out what to do and getting inundated with emails, probably from both sides, and trying to figure out what's the right thing to do.
And I've talked to a friend in the trustee's office the other day. They are extending the opportunity for seniors of limited income to freeze. That program's in place, but if you miss the deadline, I guess you've got a little bit more time to get involved in that on behalf of a family member or something.
Yeah, I think if people have any concerns, or people watching today have particular concerns, call those particular offices or go to the Nashville.gov website and look, or you can always contact me. And my email address for city work is jim.shulman@nashville.gov. Just send me the information. The mayor's office, I will tell you, has been very, very helpful in terms of answering questions that we get. We don't know everything. There is so much stuff going on out there, we can't keep up with it all. And so, for example, the council gets on a call every week with Dr. Alex Jahangir, who's the board of Metro Health. And he has been very, very helpful in terms of just talking to council members and answering their questions. And when you take 40 council members, they can have a lot of questions.
Sure.
So people might ask me something, it's like, I don't know. So we send it in to the mayor's office and we get it answered pretty quickly, and we try to get it back out.
Let's rewind to the days after March 3rd. Everyone heard, federal disaster dollars. Has that money come in? And if so, did it pay for immediate, staff, the people that were rehooking things and picking things up? Where did we stand with federal aid at that point?
So I don't know. I know that we get reimbursed through FEMA for a lot of the stuff we do, and we have to account for it and pay for it, or we have to deal with it and then send it back in from FEMA. So I don't know if that money has actually come back in yet. I know that the mayor's office particularly, and then all the groups that were out there, were trying to make sure that we accounted for any of our expenditures so we could be reimbursed. How that's going to play, I don't know how well it plays in terms of overall budgetary concerns. We were talking yesterday about the federal, the money that's coming from the federal government right now, either through the supplemental packages or the CARES Act. I'm not sure how much, if any, we're going to get of that. I know hopefully we'll get some, but it may depend on overall how it's given to the states. I think I heard yesterday that there's money allocated by the federal government for cities over 1 million people. Well, we got a lot of people moving to Nashville, but we're not quite there yet. So we may not get any of that. A lot of this stuff still has to be played out in terms of what I'm hearing. So I can do a little bit more checking on exactly whether that money has come in. I know it will eventually come in to help reimburse a lot of our expenditures for the tornadoes. There's also money that people have been applying for with FEMA individually to get help with that. I think hopefully our task force can dig into that and make sure we understand what's going on. the biggest concern from council members when we were talking about the tornadoes was rent assistance and just assistance in terms of helping people because they lost so many things.
Right.
That's what we want. We told the community foundation that's what we needed. And what we're trying to do with the task force is make sure that works. But in terms of your question about FEMA and everything else, I think we need to go back and see where we are on that. And then I can let you know.
I'm going to throw a few questions at you that came in prior from viewers interested in this. This one's tornado alert related. Since our tornado alert towers are not always up to par, could we develop a Davidson County Metro Tornado Alert app for our phones that rings an alert originating from the TV stations in conjunction with tower alerting?
Hey, at this point, we're taking all the ideas we can. I know that there were efforts being made, particularly Councilmember Rosenberg from out in Bellevue. I think he had some initial actions being taken to try to figure out how to deal or how to make those things work better in terms of the sirens. I like the idea of an app. I mean, remember, it wasn't very many years ago that we didn't have a lot of information where we could spread out. And then we started reverse 911 calls, which was a way to call people in a particular area if there was something going on. I thought that was a pretty clever idea at the time because it was a way of communicating. Now, Metro Nashville Public Schools uses that if they're closing down for some particular reason. They'll make all those giant phone calls to all these folks. So, like the app, I think one of the things I'll tell people who are watching, and I'll tell you, is that one of the things that I think we always do after an emergency, and obviously we've had two, is to take a step back. After, when we have a minute to sit down, take a step back and figure out what we did right and what we did wrong. For the most part, I think Nashville did a pretty good job of dealing with the tornadoes. I did hear from a lot of people when I was out just talking to people that they did get a ping or they got something that told them that something was, there was a serious storm coming, tornadoes coming. A lot of people told me they turned on the news stations and they watched the weather folks who told them, if you're in this area, go to your safe space. And they did. And, I know we lost 2 people in Davidson County. That's horrible. But, after seeing some of the damage around our city, I'm surprised we didn't lose more. And a lot of people were saved because they actually got that information and they turned on the television and they got to a safe space, which was very, very vital. So kudos to the weather folks for doing that, and the first responders, because they actually did. The first responders got to people. There were people buried in the rubble. And then kudos to people in the neighborhoods who actually came out and helped that evening and helped the rest of the day and then following. That was really, really important. But I like the idea of the app, and I'll put it down as something we should talk about.
And for the benefit of folks that may not be watching the chat on the screen, Steve Venick says Metro already has the Metro Emergency Alert and Notification System means. You can download it to get alerts. You can also sign up for text message alerts. So there appears to be some level of that already. Another question about the tornado, if I could. Within days, even in the New York Times, people were discussing the fear of let's don't see happen what happened in East Nashville after '98. Namely gentrification, people coming in, pricing out longtime residents. Certainly that's on your radar. What are you hearing?
Well, so it seems like this was 1,000,000 years ago.
Yeah.
But it was like, 4 weeks ago, as soon as everybody stabilized after the tornado, which was like a couple of days after that, there were meetings that went on, I know in North Nashville and possibly in East Nashville, about getting the word out not to be very, very careful. Because what we heard was that there were people already going out there and saying, don't worry about the insurance company, we'll just buy your property right now. So developers going out, trying to go, hey, I'm going to take advantage of this situation and I'm going to buy your property. And that way you just don't have to worry about it in here, and I'll pay you cash right up front. So there was an effort made by a number of different organizations around the community to say, don't do that. We can't tell you what to do with the property. It's your property, but we want to rebuild as a better community. I know efforts are being taken to do that. I think council members were warned about that because they were at those meetings and saying, don't fall prey to that. We want to be careful how we do that. And the message is, this is your neighborhood. Do not be very careful about what's going on. So again, not that you can stop that. But I do know that there are efforts being made, at least talking about efforts being made to, to rebuild and to plan it so that it's, maybe you have a pocket park, there are better lights, that type of stuff. So it's still their community, and we want it to stay their community if that's what they want.
Yeah. Another question came in advance. As of April 6th, Community Foundation had already distributed $2.72 million in grants from their emergency response fund to nonprofits. The question is, what's the oversight process for ensuring those grants are being used responsibly?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. So that's why, if you remember, there were some concerns about the flood and those flood monies, 10 years ago. And so what we wanted to do, it was to calm everybody's concerns, is to watch it. So we've been in contact with the Community Foundation. They've been sending us updates on the monies that they've been giving out. What our task force is supposed to be doing is checking on that to make sure that in terms of the grants that the Community Foundation is making, and they can make grants to, Putnam County, and they can, and then Wilson County, there's the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee, so they have a bigger challenge. But monies that, here's what we really want to watch, and we've told the Community Foundation this, is we want to make sure that when they give out funds to different not-for-profits, that we also know that the not-for-profits are addressing the needs that are out there. So again, a couple of weeks ago, before we had to kind of shut down mass meetings, we called together the directly and the indirectly impacted council members. And we went around the table, basically around the chamber, and said, what does your district need? What are you hearing from, the not-for-profits, the associations, the churches, the people in your area? What do they need? And by far, the biggest thing they needed was rental assistance, help with housing, and just basically, I think, some cash assistance to try to get stabilized. So that was put together in a memo that was sent to the Community Foundation to say, this is what the folks need. This is what we're telling you we need. Let's try to address that. So if you watch what the foundation has been doing, they've been getting money out to not-for-profits for some type of assistance like that. The question is, does it all match up? And that's what this task force is supposed to be doing, the oversight to make sure that the money that comes down, the money that everybody was so generous to give to the foundation, the money that's now going back out, is it addressing the specific need of the community? And if not, how do we fix that? So that will be, at least from the council standpoint, that's going to be our supervision.
And prior to tornado and COVID, the mayor had taken some funds out of the Barnes Fund and pledged to put them back in. Can he make good on that promise with everything else that's happening?
Well, so we'll keep an eye on it. So it's still, what happened was, it was a $10 million grant to the Barnes Fund. $5 million of it was kind of what we would say impounded, was taken off the table at the time. $5 million is still there, and I believe grants have gone out, some probably recently, to affordable housing groups to keep the affordable housing concept going. Now, what's going to be interesting is what happens when we come out on the other side of this thing. Do we have so much growth, so many places being built. I don't know what's going to happen. That's for us to try to figure out on the back end, and we're going to need to do that. But on the front end, the extra $5, the council, I know, passed a resolution that said, hey, when we get this money back, that's the first place it needs to go, is to put it back in the affordable housing fund, the Barnes Fund. At this point, we'll have to kind of watch the budget and see what we can do. I mean, if everything had been normal, nothing had happened, I think there was going to be a deliberate attempt by both the council and, without speaking on behalf of the mayor, I know that they felt there were serious concerns about having to take it, but they were trying to balance our budget. I think there would be an effort to put money back into that thing and make it work. So Barnes Fund is very, very important. Affordable housing is important. We're keeping an eye on this as we go through this crisis.
Before we get away from numbers, my good friend Avi Poster says, how serious is the mayor about asking 100 million cut from MNPS? Is that a soundbite or a real number? How will this extend to an impact on pledges for additional affordable housing?
Yeah, so it's a good question from Avi. I don't know much about that one. I've read the information. I don't know much about it. I think at this point, what I would say to Avi and everybody else listening is that these are pretty crucial times for the city financially. I think I personally don't believe in sound bites. I mean, I think that when he's asking, I think you take it seriously. Look, I mean, we were, and Avi knows this as well, our budget wasn't in very good shape coming into this year. We know that. And if you watch the information, if you watch the information that Councilmember Mendez and Councilmember Toombs, who is his vice chair, projected and gave to people during the regional meetings, it kind of explained what was going on. We've been overspending for the last, I think, 8, 9, 10 years. That's not good. Obviously not good. When the property tax, when we had the reassessment several years ago, our rate dropped to $3.15. And we all walked around and said how wonderful it was, that it was the lowest rate in Metro history, but then we didn't raise it. And we probably should have at that point, because again, you can't keep overspending and you can't sell one-time assets. That wasn't going to work. So we were in a difficult situation going in, and now we've had 2 separate crises that have happened. And the first one was bad enough, but the second one, from an economic standpoint, was devastating to the city. So we had a bad budget, and now we've got an even worse situation, and we've got to figure out how to come back on the other side with not knowing exactly what's going to happen, and be able to figure out how to balance and how to make the city function. So I take anything that the mayor says at this point fairly seriously.
Reinforce this again, Jim. Someone's asking about, we make so much off of tourism money. Can't we get some of that? We got some of that recently.
Yeah. So I think there was Music City Center gave like another 40 million, I believe. So obviously this is where people do step up. This is very important. So that was very appreciated. But if our hit is $230 million this quarter alone,
right?
That only addresses part of it. So and so I'll change it just a little bit. So one of the things that I was actually talking to some other southeastern states yesterday about taking care of older people is, when we come out on the other side, which we will at some point, and I've also had discussions with other people about the city. Are people, let's say we hit our peak, whenever that may be. Some people say it's going to be next week. Vanderbilt said it may be May, it may be later than that, depends on what we do. What happens on the other side of this thing? Do people, and this is from a health standpoint and an economic standpoint, do people all of a sudden, it's like, at one day, it's like, all of a sudden you don't have to be safe or in place. Do people just open the doors and all of a sudden it's like normal? I don't think so. From a couple different standpoints. First of all, kind of a new way of life, and people have sort of gotten used to this. Second of all, I think people took all this, as they should have, seriously. This was very dangerous to people, and still is. And so are we going to allow, immediately mass gatherings on some date, or do we slowly bring this back in and say, no, you're going to have to limit, just like we do now in grocery stores or whatever, where you stay 6 feet apart? How is that going to play? Are we going to see giant crowds on Broadway, let's say in July? Some people might say yes, some people might say no. No, I think people got shocked by this, and they may just not come back in mass, just in terms of the mass gatherings that we had before. We'll have to see. So that may impact the budget all the way. It's going to be, we've never been through anything like this, obviously. So, let's say that, let's say that the summer helps, slow down the virus. Do we then get ready for a fall rebound of this thing? And do we let people come out during that period of time? Or do people go, I'm not going to risk it for a while until we get a virus. And so for the next year, everything is a little bit quieter than it has been. Don't know. But that's a health related issue, particularly for, we were looking at it from a standpoint of older people, because those were the at-risk folks. They may not come out for a while, and maybe they shouldn't come out for a while, or they got to be very careful. But, you had the millennials, and you saw the pictures of spring break in Miami, who weren't taking it very seriously. And then people realized that it was very dangerous. And then they stopped. Will they start, on some point in the future, will they all start going back out again? We'll see. I will tell you one other thing. These calls with the southeastern states are interesting because we talk about different situations. And I think it was Kentucky that said they had a massive outbreak due to 2 funerals.
Yeah.
That this happened, and it may have been in February, but they can trace it back to 2 specific instances of something happening where, I think it was Kentucky. It was 2 specific funerals that they can track back to what happened. There were other situations around. I'm trying to remember if that was the right statement. It doesn't matter. It's just, you can actually track it back to mass gatherings and saying that people got impacted or infected, and it spread very, very quickly from that. So we have to be careful. We have to be very careful on the other side of this.
What are you doing personally? Are you gloving and masking when you go out?
So I have been wearing a bandana that says Goo Goo Clusters on it because since my daughter banned me from sugar, so that's the closest I can get to eating a Goo Goo Cluster. So I have been day job. We allowed everybody to work from home. So because sometimes I have to go in between my day job and the courthouse, I actually have been going into the office because I can drive into the office. I can park in the building. I don't see anyone in. I can take an elevator up, which has been cleaned, and I can sit in my office. And I'm the only one in my office that's there. Every so often somebody will come to pick something up, but I'm the only one there. So I think there's one person in another office down, like in the other part of the floor, but so I might see one person during the day, and we practice social distancing. I have gone to the grocery store, and at first I wasn't wearing a mask, but was practicing social distancing and trying to make sure that I went at a time where it wasn't very crowded. The last time I went to the grocery store, I wore my bandana and felt kind of like a cowboy, but it was, but yep, I had it on. And as you know, I got my first granddaughter was born a couple weeks ago.
Photos, please.
Let me see. My daughter sent me one. Let me see if I can pull it back up.
That's got to be hard to not go love on that baby.
Yes, it is. There she is. There. Wait a minute.
Oh,
This
send her up. Oh, beautiful.
There she is, Tilly. She's got her name on her thing. So I have seen her from 10 feet away. The closest I've been is 7 feet away, 6 or 7 feet. So I am very careful. She is beautiful. I want to go play with her. I want to go hold her, and I can't. So I don't know what the point of having grandchildren is if you can't go play with them and spoil them. So somebody said, well, just wait.
There will be time.
There will be plenty of time. You'll just have plenty of time to make up for it. So anyway.
Fortunately, they're now starting to use the terminology of recoveries. We have 24% recoveries in the state of Tennessee from, I think, the latest stats. But still, there's going to be a lot of families forever changed by this. You know, how do you talk to, are you getting calls from those people that are just devastated and have gone through this life-altering illness?
I'm not personally getting calls at this point. I think we will at some point maybe in the next couple of months when we sort of get maybe on the other side of the peak. Yeah. And then we'll have a chance to, I think, unfortunately, during a period of crisis, everybody's in crisis mode. So everybody's going really, really fast. And you're trying again to stay several steps ahead. It was interesting. I had a conversation. We had a call with a guy named Greg Olson, who is the State Unit on Aging Director in New York, the state of New York. On that day, he had 125,000. They had 125,000 confirmed cases of COVID-19. They have been in panic mode, and it was interesting listening to him because he was. They did what I think all governments should do at times like this, and first of all, kudos to Mayor Cooper for stepping up, and the same thing to Governor Lee. What you do is you basically say, get the barriers out of the way. You've got things to do, you've got people to take care of, clear out the basic bureaucracy of government and move. And working their tails off up there because they have no choice. They have got to feed people, they've got to provide essential services, and they've got to be very, very protective of their volunteers and everybody else that they're trying to serve. I don't think they've had a chance to hear from, they may have run into people who have had it and recovered. I don't know if we've had the chance. Every time I talk to some of the care folks down here, they are in active mode. But at some point, again, on the other side of this, we're going to have to figure out what happened and how we can help some people recover from this. Just like the tornadoes. Yeah. You almost have to have, again, another sit down after this is all over and go, okay, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? And what about these people? And, did they, one of the big questions, did they have insurance? Are they okay? I don't know. There's so much going on. At some point, we're going to have to, again, at some appropriate time, stop and then try to figure out what happened and how we can be helpful again.
A couple of nuts and bolts procedure things that we talked about maybe before we went live. Yeah. How are you planning on dealing with public hearings on bills that are on second reading? This person asked concerning zoning. This whole how do we do it now is an IT challenge and a procedural challenge for the council.
You got that right. So as we were talking before, we had a meeting 3.5 weeks ago. We're required by the Metro Charter to meet on the first and third Tuesdays of the month. So that third Tuesday in March, it was St. Patrick's Day. We had budget resolutions. We had some bond resolutions up on our agenda that the finance department really needed us to pass as they were going into this crisis. And so we didn't have the ability at that point to have a meeting by teleconference. So our choice was, our choice was to have a meeting. And so what we did was we went in the morning of the meeting and we assigned seats to all council members. We asked the public not to come, and we got every council member within, they were 9 feet away. We actually John Cooper, not the mayor, our legal director, actually had didn't have a yardstick. He had a tape measure, and we were measuring where people were to make sure they were 9 feet away. Committees were all canceled. We deferred basically everything, but we got those bond resolutions passed. Thanks to the council members for coming in. It looked a little funny in the chamber that we had people in the back where the public usually sits. They were told to be there at 6:30 to get to their seats and to not mingle around as they normally would. It was like, come to your seats and sit there. I felt like a father telling my children to sit down. But everybody was told to sit down so that you wouldn't walk around. Everybody stayed in their seats. We got through the resolutions, and when we cleared out. Second meeting, which just happened last Tuesday. So the IT folks from Metro, General Services, everybody else were involved in allowing us to teleconference. So we did it through some type of WebEx format. People were on the phones. There were there were 2 council members in the chamber. Councilmember Mendez, because he was chair of Budget and Finance, and Councilmember Syracuse, because he's our pro tem. That allowed us to have a motion in a second, but everybody else was on the phone. We had all 40 members present. 38 were on the phone. And what we had to do was we had to take a roll call at the beginning. It worked. Very few technical glitches. And then we had to vote. I'm not sure if I think we did have one roll call vote, but we had most of the votes were we'd open up the machine. Well, we wouldn't open the machines, where the phones would open up and we'd ask for aye votes and no votes and any abstentions. I'd call out the vote and then we'd move on. We got through our agenda. It took 3.5 hours. Okay, now your question. That was a public hearing night. So we deferred everything because we weren't that good with the technical stuff yet. We will have a lot of bills up on public hearing at the first meeting in May. Planning is going through the same thing. The Planning Commission is trying to figure out what they're going to do because they have public hearings. So they're working on it. They're trying to figure out how they do it. We had a meeting yesterday of our executive committee of the council, which are all the chairmen. And we heard from Keith Durbin, who's head of Metro IT. They are working at coming up with several different options for people to attend a public hearing without actually physically being there. Whether they can send in an email, which could be read, whether they can do it by some type of communications over the computer, whether there's some way that they can Skype in. They're looking at every possible option to give us so we can figure out how if we're ready to go at that first meeting in May, how we do public hearings. Governor's executive order allows us to have teleconference meetings while this is going on. We've read it very carefully. Essential functions of government, council, this is what it does. It does the zoning and it does the contracts and it does the underground encroachments and the aerial encroachments and the sewers and the manhole covers. And I mean, that's the essential function of what we do besides pass the budget. So what we have to figure out a way to continue our essential functions, but that public hearing part, we've got to figure out how to deal with that as well. So we're working on it. Just stay tuned.
How concerned are you about this remote learning in the schools? We had a question, who makes that decision on whether schools continue doing that for the year and lowering standards we're hearing about, or at least criteria for graduation? I mean, is the class of 2020 going to, retain a mark from this academically?
God, I hope not. I know that, think of your senior year, think of my senior year. Those were such special times for so many people, and we haven't taken away from it. This COVID-19 is taking away.
Sure.
I think they'll hopefully get what they need to be able to graduate, and then they'll go on and do what they want to do. Think of college students that all of a sudden now can't walk through the graduation line and can't end their senior year as well. I don't think I would call it a mark on them. I think everybody will know what happened. I hope that people, the students are finishing up and, I know that they're much more clever than I am at using technology to figure out, Zoom and communicating with each other. It's just a little different, and to me, it's sad that they can't go through that in part. But they're pretty good at finding ways to connect. I hopefully they'll be fine. I wish there was a better way. I know that the school's trying to figure out how to do all this stuff. Maybe they can open back up for a period of time. We'll see. But
I've got a niece who's so disappointed that she won't be able to wear her prom dress that took all year to choose,
Yeah, I understand. that.
Pardon my looking forward because I'm trying to read some of these questions on the screen.
Okay.
I'm a support staff member with a son who attends MNPS. Myself and other employees will actually have a pay cut if benefits and taxes go up and they don't get the normal steps or COLA raises. How do you plan on preventing this from happening? Isn't everything basically in a freeze now anyway?
Everything is sort of stuck as I think, let me try to answer it this way. I think the question to some extent may go back a couple of years ago when we had promised pay raises across the board to Metro employees, and we would have done the teachers, I think, as well. And when this was probably 2 years ago, 2 years ago in terms of the budget, we were not able to follow up with that because we didn't have the money. And I think I, for one, along with the rest of the council, felt really, I think there was a lot of really people who had bad feelings about that. It's still on people's minds, particularly for council members who came back. So as we approached this year, there was really kind of going to be a concerted effort to try to take care of teachers and deal with those situations, COLA raises, whatever. I know we got more money in last year, but it wasn't enough. I think people were very interested in trying to take care of that. We're still interested in taking care of it. That hasn't gone off the table. I think the problem is we don't know where we are right now financially.
Yeah.
And so we have to wait for the mayor. I know we really weren't waiting anyway, because I know Councilor Mendes and Finance, they've been getting ready for this. And they were ready to go. And then all of a sudden these things hit. So I guess what I'm asking is for people to just hang with us, pay attention, tell us the concerns. We're already hearing from employees and teachers that are saying, don't do this on our backs again. That's not fair. We understand. This is one of the things, we're all in this together. We're gonna have to work on this together and figure out where.
Yeah. You froze on my screen for a second, but I think I've got you back. COVID and General Hospital. Do you think that it has sort of proven the case that we need a city resource like that? General has been so controversial in the past couple of years.
So I'm a big believer in having a safety net hospital. General has been at the table as well. I think they've been great, along with all the other. We had, I think this may be a little bit of good news. We heard this the other day. I'm not sure if it's been reported, but they were opening up over 1,000 beds in the Music City Center. At this point, they think they may not need something that large. Right. But I would always caution that depends on whether we're all doing what we're supposed to be doing. But that's good news. We're hopefully having a better handle on all these things, and people are doing what they're supposed to do. In terms of a safety net hospital, I always think you need it. Now, again, there hasn't been a lot of talk lately, or at least in the last month or two, about General, except, everybody stepping up and doing what they're supposed to. But General seems to be much more financially sound. I think they've got a lot of their stuff together. I just think you need a hospital like that in a big city like ours to deal with different issues, different health concerns and different issues. And maybe this COVID-19 thing just puts a little bit more spotlight on it, that we actually do need a hospital like General. I'm a big believer in General. I believe it needs to be there.
There's all this talk of antibody testing and perhaps people getting immunity cards or some way to regulate who goes back to work and where. Have those discussions come down to the city level yet, or is it all sort of still up in the air?
Here, did you mind? I missed part of that. Can you repeat it?
These immunity tests where you perhaps might even get a card that says, I've been exposed, I have antibodies, I'm allowed to work. Enforcement of immunity. Have you guys discussed any of that, or is that still sort of at the federal and?
That may be at the federal level. It hasn't come up on our calls with, at least I don't believe so, with Dr. Jahangir. But I can put it on the table and see where we are. I know that we don't get everything. I mean, these guys are moving at such breakneck speed.
Yeah.
That I know they're quickly trying to make sound healthcare decisions on behalf of everybody. And I don't know where they are on that one. I mean, for a while, if you remember, they were just trying to make sure they had masks and things like that. That may be an issue that comes up on the next several calls. We'll see.
Have you seen good compliance in terms of people following the rules? Yesterday, I think I saw too many people on a golf course, in my opinion.
So I'm telling you, my dog just came into the room. So
great.
You hear somebody barking, that's her.
I hear the jingling.
Yeah, she's walking around. She just got in, and she's happy now that she's here with me. For the most part, I do see people actually comply. I know that there's been several instances of people saying, hey, there's too many people on a playground or whatever. And, people have been, the park police have been called, the police have come and dealt with that. I would say that, for a country, for a city that wasn't used to any of this stuff, I think overall Nashville's done a pretty good job. I mean, again, that's just for me driving around if I go to the office or if I go to see my granddaughter from 10 feet away, or when I go out and exercise, when I go take a jog. So few cars. It's so interesting. And somebody said it the other day. They said, it seems like the air is cleaner. It's like it's fresh air because there's so much. I think they were just noticing that there's so few cars on the road that it just seems like something's a little different. But again, even just walking around the neighborhood, people are practicing social distancing. And I know that even now, if I run into somebody and they're within that 6-foot range, I'll take a step back. I mean, I think we're just now also geared up to it that it's going to be interesting again on the other side of this thing to see if we actually even hug each other anymore, or whether we all just stay 6 feet away from each other and we just don't have any contact. I'd like to get back to I want to hug my granddaughter. That's what I really want to do. Understood.
Absolutely. We got a couple more minutes left according to my little digital clock here. And I don't want to take you into the weeds and the territory of property taxes again, but there have been several comments about the last reassessment. Large commercial and residential people ended up actually paying less.
Right.
With a rate increase, obviously, will things equalize, you think, a bit more?
I think we'll watch that. And I think, again, a lot of this is waiting on the mayor to make some determination. Once he does that, my guess would be that there will be a presentation from the mayor or from his, excuse me, from his budget director or his fiscal director, Kevin Crumbo. And then you need to pay attention to us. Then people watching need to keep an eye on the council. Make sure that they understand what we're discussing. If not, contact your council member or contact me. And I think we need to watch, and then there needs to be probably a better explanation because of what happened last time, where there, some people who were in what you consider higher income areas actually had their tax rates reduced because of the nature of how it all worked. What we'll need to do is try to do our best to explain to people. Oh, my dog is jumping up now on this thing. try to explain to people what it actually is going to look like, so people will see that. I know that a couple of years ago there was concerns about, when the council was looking at jumping that tax rate, that it looked like a double whammy for some people who had just had their tax rates increased. Even though the tax rate fell, it was because that area of the city, the property values had gone up so high. This is going to be a little bit more unique in terms of whether, because it's not during a reassessment year. The reassessment year, I think, is next year.
And that's all set by statute, correct? Or
yeah, reassessments are every 4 years. But and typically, I mean, so most of the people watching have been through this before. That tax rate is readjusted automatically every 4 years, because it can't, the reassessment can't generate additional property tax dollars. So you have to jump the rate down. Probably, I don't know if you call it jumping, you drop the rate. And then typically the council will readjust it and bring it back up a little bit to generate enough revenues for the next 4 years. So you don't have, you basically have one set of property tax increases, and then you wait 4 years, and hopefully that money carries you for the 4 years. That's basically how it works. 4 years ago, or, well, 2 years ago, when we had the reassessment, we didn't jump the rate. It went down to $3.15. It didn't go back. It didn't go up at all. And so that's one of the, looking back, that's one of the problems, is that
right.
That's what got us into the budget situation we were in going into these disasters. So,
and finally, I'm thinking pre March 3rd and COVID, Nashville's state bird or local bird was the crane. And now, are we in danger of some of these large projects maybe stopping and having half-finished buildings all over town?
I certainly hope not. I mean, I would think that the funding was there to finish these projects and do. Now, the question on the other side is, again, the kind of the unknown. I think everybody's been so busy that nobody's talked to. I mean, last year we were talking about Amazon. Well, they're building a building downtown.
Yeah.
Alliance Bernstein building downtown that's going to be finished. We haven't had any discussions about that. I think the focus, like it should have been, was on health concerns. Now we have some financial issues coming up. We've got to deal with this budget. And then we see what happens after. So it's kind of an unknown, but it's an unknown for everybody. It's not like, anybody's been through this quite before, so we'll see. But we're going to get through this. We're all in this together. I think I'm really proud of Nashville. I was proud of Nashville after the tornadoes. Unbelievable the amount of help that went into getting that situation addressed. I'm proud of Nashville for practicing safer at home and doing social distancing and being helpful. We'll get through this, and then we'll see where we are. But for those watching, keep an eye on the council, keep an eye on the mayor. That's what you're supposed to do anyway. And we'll kind of see where we are. But I was told, I got a note that I was supposed to explain the picture behind me. That is Babe Ruth in his final game.
Wow.
It's not signed, so don't worry about that. But this whole wall behind me is a picture wall that my wife put up with family members, and I'm a big baseball fan. And there's a picture of my family right here. Wait a minute, I'm pointing. There it is. Of my mother and dad and my brothers and sisters. Actually, my mom and dad aren't in that picture, but it's it's 6 of my siblings are in that picture when we were.
So who won Family Jeopardy, or who's in the lead?
Well, I can't. The person in the lead is my cousin Lori Strauss Inman, who lives in Rhode Island, and actually, when I came out with the scores, my granddaughter was in first place with 1 million points, even though she's 2 weeks old, and she won really. But my cousin Lori is in first place. A whole section of my cousins got together, which I think was probably cheating, but we didn't care. My cousin Arnold Sundell and his family are in second place, and my sister Susan is in third place. But we have one final category, so I'm waiting for their final wagers for Final Jeopardy to come in, and then they'll get the question, and then I can let you know. Okay.
All
Should be a
right.
fight to the finish.
Well, God bless you and all the other elected officials who take on quite a challenge. And I'm sure there are times when you say, "What did I get myself into?" But we're all glad that you're
Well, thank you.
in the
I hope
game
this was,
and hitting like Babe Ruth.
well, thank you for doing this. I very much appreciate you taking the time. I hope people got something out of this. Maybe next time we can have a little bit more, if we do it again, we can have a little bit more fun. Usually I have characters and things that I'll parade around, but this was a more serious conversation. So I thought we should keep it a little bit more serious, but thank you for taking the time and doing it. And I appreciate people listening. I hope it was helpful.
My pleasure. And I learned a lot. Thank you, Vice Mayor Shulman.
Thank you. And I'm not sure how we get out of this, Dimitri.
I think everyone just hits their red X and says goodbye.
You know what? We're all learning. So goodbye. Everybody stay safe. Thank you.